Black Lives Matter, where y'all at? Somebody get Black Lives Matter on the phone right now. Since y'all claim that y'all care about everybody and their mama who is a victim of police brutality, oh, I'm confused because y'all ain't said nothing about this lady who was shot by the police after she was the one who called 911 for help. And guess what? The officer is not even in jail, and that still didn't trigger y'all to say nothing. I haven't heard from y'all. I ain't seen y'all. I haven't even heard from Al Sharpton. He supposed to be for everybody, but I guess since he can't get paid off this, he can't get no check. He ain't showing up at all. But I ain't seen no riots from y'all. I ain't seen no protests, no highways blocked, no cars busted up. I ain't seen no burning houses, no burning buildings. I ain't seen no outrage from y'all. Nobody been speaking out, but y'all say y'all care about everybody? Nah, y'all don't. Y'all ain't nothing but a lie. Because if y'all cared about everybody, y'all would have said something about this. But so Black Lives Matter is not about police brutality. Black Lives Matter is a racist group that is only about when a white cop shoot a black person, no matter what they do, no matter if they are in the right or the wrong, they don't care. They will be mad because they are racist. And that's it. And they don't care if a black kill a black. So y'all don't care about nobody. So until y'all care about everybody, until it's about all lives, y'all need to go to bed and shut it on down. We don't want to hear nothing else from y'all no more. Bye-bye.
Well, all right. This is Lou Benninger, and you're listening to Live with Lou. It's Saturday, and it's hot out there. Here with Leon Lampkin. He's running the board today, and this is the 29th of July. This is the last show for July, and we just keep plowing on here. And if you happen to be listening to the radio and you don't know what you're listening to, you know what station you're listening to, let me just remind you, I think it's illegal we do this. This is the Patriot. We're out here in Northern California in Yuba County, and this is 1410 AM, or you can listen over there at the FM at 104.3. And so we know that we reach out to portions of maybe about 5 counties, a few, all of the county, but portions of others up here in Northern California, the state of Jefferson. And if you have a difficulty listening to us, if you're in an area that the signal is weak, you can actually listen on the internet, and you can go to kmycradio.com and click on the listen live button, and it should be live. Now it's not live, it's not streaming, it's not recorded for later, but let's see, are we going to be able to do that this week? Since it's on, So the reason I said that is that even though this is a Saturday show and it's live, we're recording it the day before because I couldn't be here on Saturday. But so the only difference is if you wanted to call in and you wanted to have a chat or get on the radio yourself, we won't have that available. But if you want to leave a complaint or an attaboy, you can do it at 742-5555. And the boss of the station listens to those comments. And sometimes he relays them to me. Most of the time he doesn't, but he pays attention to what's going on. 742-5555. But again, we're not going to be answering the phone and taking those live calls and getting your input. So if I misstate something, we'll just have to clean it up the next week. Well, we're happy that you're listening. And if you are listening to the show and got to go somewhere else or get interrupted, or just for you that listen on and off but would like to listen some other time, which the reason I bring that up is people say, hey, we can't, I'm busy on Saturday. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm up on a boat. I'm doing this. Is there another time to listen? Do you have it recorded somewhere? So courtesy of Chris Starkey, we have the ability, if you go onto YouTube and then put in One Eye Blind Media, 4 separate words with a space, just like you lay it out in a sentence, One Eye Blind Media, and you go to that YouTube site or channel, and then you look up playlists. You'll see an option of various lists, and my name's there, Live with Lou, and you can click on the show that you want. So it usually takes us a few days past Saturday to get it up. So, but then you can listen to it at your leisure or driving down the road and however you want to click and all your technology. You know much more about it than I do. So I just returned from Vietnam, where I have a project over there I've been working on for years. And this is the first time I've ever gone to Vietnam where it's cooler in Vietnam, which is a tropical country, than it is in California. I mean, it's been a scorcher this summer. And so I always am kind of have nostalgic feelings or sorrowful feelings when I leave over there because I like it over there. But I particularly didn't want to come back to heat when I looked on the internet and it was over 100 degrees, 102, 103, 104. Yikes. I was freaking out. People don't do well when it gets over 100 degrees around here. Well, this is a part of the Obama resistance. We used to say that for all the years that when we were on the radio here. We started after Obama came into office. We used to call ourselves the Obama resistance, but we still are resisting because Obama still hasn't yielded the presidency. He's still running around trying to overthrow and take over the country, but he's just doing it deceitfully. And he always was a liar and a con guy. Have you ever seen such a guy where you could just watch him speak on the television when he would make statements like President Trump does today? And he would just seem so legitimate and such a man of integrity and honest and transparent, but he was just like a con man. You ever had a con man? You ever had a convict hustle you or a drug addict hustle you? They're so sincere and believable. And so when Obama would come on and he would say that he had no idea what was going on in Benghazi, or that the IRS scandal or the Fast and Furious scandal or the many other scandals that went on, he learned about it by getting up and reading the newspaper, turning on the radio. I thought, boy, he's just like me. He's just learning stuff just like me. He doesn't have any advantage, no insightful, wise counselors, no psychics, no wise people, no astrologers, prophets, nothing. He just totally on his own, and he just stumbles across information like I do. So we're still a part of the Obama resistance, and we're operating out of Mount Huth out here in eastern Yuba County. And so here we go. We're here for 3 hours, so if you're new to this, we'll kick around here till noon. And then after that, there's kind of a cool sports talk show that I'm becoming familiar with. It pops in right after me. So if you like sports talk, the two guys that are on there, they're pretty entertaining and they're pretty knowledgeable. I like, I played sports when I was younger. I would just love to watch sports on TV, not so much anymore. It's kind of become too political. The left wing, the liberals have just ruined sports. They just got their propaganda throughout. That's why ESPN's in the tank. Now, I just saw this morning, I was reading an article on the internet, and it was talking about the NFL. And so the viewership of NFL tanked last year, and they made all kinds of excuses why it tanked. Tanked means that it's going down. So that means when viewership goes down, then advertisers don't want to pay as much per 30-second or 1-minute spot. And so it went down by 10, 20, 30, 40% at times. And so when they took surveys, they said, we're sick of politics. We just want to watch sports. That's what we want to watch, and we want to hear the folks speaking about sports, the announcers or the broadcasters, talk about the game and not about politics, not take shots at the president, not get all involved in protests and all. We just want to. It's a place to vent. You know, sports is kind of a. It's kind of like me. I like to go to violent movies or watch a violent movie. It's kind of an escape, right? It's just kind of a breather. You're taking a little deep step away from the daily stresses of life. And so when sports then becomes just another way to jam-a-rama the baloney of the left in this country, people just say, I'd rather just do something else, listen to music or something. So I was just watching where they were saying, or reading where they were saying that the protests with the national anthem just deep sixed the ratings on the NFL last year. And I also was watching, how one of these sports talk on television or the internet, you'd have two guys and they give, they argue back and forth, and it's really kind of, they over talk everything. But they were debating the thing between what Colin Kaepernick, the fact that he is still if you look at his statistics, he's a high-performing quarterback, but nobody wants him. And even when you look at Tim Tebow, his performance wasn't that bad when he turned around the Denver Bronco team that was had a losing record early in the season, turned around and took them to the conference playoffs. But Tim Tebow was ushered out of the NFL as well. Kaepernick's probably a better talented quarterback than Tebow. But both of them, probably for the same reason, is that who they were as people, the NFL didn't want. So the NFL owners are not interested in a guy that is known not so much for his good football play as his cause, which is claiming that the United States is no better than it was during the time of slavery in terms of racism. And so they don't want a player on their team that's constantly going to have people leaving the stadium, right? And the same is true of Tim Tebow's good works and philanthropy and Christian testimony, that they didn't like his Christian testimony. So they ushered him out of the league. Remember, they jacked him around and people were promising him this and promising him that, and he believed people, trusted people, and he got, I don't know whether it was the Philadelphia Eagles he tried out for, but the bottom line is that people don't like to mix religion in sports or politics in sports. And no matter what you feel about Tim Tebow's faith, which I concur with it, and I'm of the same persuasion, but it rubbed people the wrong way. So they just said, you're out of here. So when you hear about people getting blackballed from a job or sports or something because of something about them, whether it's a positive attribute or in some people's view a negative attribute, like for instance, black people rated very highly in liking what Kaepernick was doing, but if you want to have an NFL that only black people watch, then keep Kaepernick around. But the bottom line, these sports franchises are a business, and they're going to make business decisions at the end of the day, as opposed to what ESPN wants to do. Is basically ESPN's going to see the entire network go down the tubes based upon their liberal philosophy. So this week I got a kick out of this last couple of weeks. I was in Vietnam, but I was watching the news from over there. If I hack a little bit this morning, I came back with kind of the tail end of a cold. So pardon me, I got a little cold water here to hose it down. But I was watching from overseas as Donald Trump tweeted out the fact that he was going to stop transgenders coming into the military. You remember, for the history of the United States, all the way back to the beginning, transgenders were not allowed in the military. And when he did that, there was a gasp. If you stood outside your door, you could hear it around the country of Hollywood and people throwing a fit that they didn't want. They were shocked that transgender soldiers couldn't go out and defend them. Even though most of Hollywood has never been in the service and don't know the first thing about it. But it reminded me of my days coming out of Marysville High School when I was becoming 17. And so the summer before my senior year, I became 17. And at that time, and I think still young people need to do that today, they need to sign up for the selective service boys do when they become 17. Did you do that? You didn't do that. Okay. Well, if you don't do that and you want a help going to college or something, and it's a government grant, they'll turn you down. So just a thought. You can still sign up. But anyway, we had to sign up. It was a penalty if you didn't, because we were at war. It wasn't a declared war, but it was called the Vietnam War. And so it wasn't just a matter of signing up and doing some military time. There's a high chance, a high probable chance, in fact, 90%, that you would go to Vietnam and do a tour of duty, even if you did a basic 2-year hitch in the Army. Of course, Marines was 4, Navy was 4, Air Force was 4. You could, if you did reserves, there were other options. But the fact is that when we were all becoming seniors, we knew about the seniors ahead of us and the seniors ahead of them that were already in Vietnam, and we were hearing reports back or their bodies coming back. And so some had made plans on what they're going to do: join the Navy, join this, do that, and or go to college. You could stay in college. Once you graduated, then you would have to go in. So there were a lot of options, but some people fled to Canada upon graduating, and some tried to feign that they had a problem, like they were that would exclude them from the military. So some would claim that they were sick, or they had flat feet, or they were homosexual, or something was odd about them that they thought would X them out. Like I had double vision when I was younger, and they hadn't figured out how to correct it. And so I told even though I wasn't trying to get out, I just went down and did my thing, applied. I said, well, I have double vision. Is that a problem? And they said, oh, no, we don't care whether you have double vision, as long as you can shoot a rifle. So, but I got a kick out of people's just total ignorance and shock that being a transgendered individual, transsexual, would keep you out of the military. But there are many, many things to keep you out of the military. They just don't take anybody. So let me give you an example, since a lot of you maybe didn't serve in the military, don't have any idea what the rules are. So you can be too short and not be able to go into the military. If you're below 60 inches, if you're a man below 60 inches, a woman 58 inches, can't go in. If you're too tall, you can't go in. Men above 80 inches, women above 80 inches, neither of them can go in. If you have silicone breast implants, you can't go. If you have endometriosis, you can't go in. If you have ovarian cysts, you have an abnormal pap smear. If you have ever had an organ transplant, if you're a recipient, you can't go in. If you have a testicle that never descended, you can't go in. If you have some ailments caused by sexually transmitted illnesses or diseases, you can't go in. If you have an amputated penis that prevents proper urination, you can't go in. Absence of a kidney, deformed skull, face, or jaw, spastic neck. If you have coronary heart disease, cardiomyopathy, varicose veins, an unrepaired cleft palate or lip, a vocal cord paralysis, epilepsy, head shunt, certain types of head injuries, multiple sclerosis, psychosis, Antisocial behaviors, personality disorder. Now we're getting into the area of transgender or transsexual. When you start talking about personality disorders, it wasn't till recently till it became politically incorrect to have transsexual behavior listed as a mental disorder. They scrubbed that. The psychologists did, because they're run by liberal operations. Personality disorder, certain types of acne, contact dermatitis, sun sensitivity, plantar warts, fused or bent spine, tuberculosis, allergies to insects that can cause anaphylaxis, sleep apnea, and cancer. So, the military isn't for everybody, and there's a lot of reasons that you can get yourself excluded from it if you got any of those ailments. Now, changing one's gender through hormones and multiple surgeries is not for the faint of heart. Let me just say that. I think you have to be pretty confused, and you have to be pretty amazing to want to have somebody cut off your parts. But to me, these other ailments, 30-some ailments I read off there, are a lot less problematic than being transsexual. And so whether Hollywood or the left likes it or not, or the LBT, etc., they're just going to have to get over it until they get a new president that's going to let everybody come in. Now, if you talk to military people, I have to, like the Navy SEALs, like there was some fake news about some Navy SEAL throwing a big fit about it. That was a transsexual. It was totally fake news. So anyway, there's your thought about that. I want to let you know also that whenever the government gets involved in anything, it screws it up. So all the while that I was dealing drugs back in years ago, we never had a shortage of drugs. But now in Nevada, there's a shortage of pot. So we'll be right back and carry on with that topic.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
Well,
I don't even trust you to do that.
All right, we're back. Had to go get me some hot coffee. Calm my throat down. I got kind of a scratchy throat, as I mentioned earlier. Well, I mentioned before we went to the break about all these states have begun to legalize the use of pot. I don't have a count for you. It really doesn't make any difference, but California did 10 years ago. It maybe more than 10 years ago, they legalized, or we legalized, a majority of us did, the use of pot for medical benefit. And then this last year, we legalized it where anybody, if you're of age, could have up to 1 ounce, which is a ridiculously small amount. So now, of course, instead of just letting anybody and everybody grow it, the government, like they've done with alcohol and cigarettes, just squeeze taxes and fees, and regulate, and just make it a massive government fiasco. So everywhere I've gone in the world that's communist, where there's government management, it becomes a huge mess. And for instance, when you manage the food supply, people starve. That happened in China. That happened in the Soviet Union. That happened in Vietnam. In fact, I've talked to people personally that lived there, that lived through it and survived. It happened in Cambodia. A third of their people died. So when the government gets involved, whether it's running the train called Amtrak or managing anything, things become very, very expensive and poor service. Amtrak, for instance, rarely runs on time. It's horribly run operation, subsidized. It's just wherever government gets involved, it screws things up. So here we have, I just saw where Nevada was going to sell pot, and so they were making all this money, and they sold so much so fast that they ran out. The supplies ran out because it all is government managed. So now California, excuse me, there's an article that says California has too much pot, and the growers won't be able to export it. Now, why wouldn't they be able to export it? Now, when I sold drugs and pot, we just did what we wanted with pot. And we sold it wherever we wanted. We sold it to other states, et cetera, et cetera. But the way the rules are in the United States, I guess that you can't sell pot outside this state and still be legal. So it's a problem. So it says a leader of the California's marijuana industry warned Wednesday that state's cannabis growers produce 8 times the pot that is consumed in this state. So some of you aren't smoking enough pot. And some of you maybe need to try to start smoking to get rid of some of this product. Now, pretty soon, wouldn't this be odd if we started paying pot growers to not grow it like we do rice growers and other crops, other grain crops? It's called corporate welfare, right? Republicans are against welfare for single women with kids, but they don't mind taking $100,000 to not plant a crop, right? So what about maybe we should pay cannabis growers because they can't export their product to another state. There's too much of it to sell in California because not enough of you are smoking pot. So maybe we ought to pay them not to grow it. Now, what this meeting that occurred here the other day, so they were saying some growers will stay in the black market and continue to illegally send cannabis to other states, which is also, as it says here, according to Hezekiah Allen, who's the executive director of California's Growers Association. He says it's not allowed under federal law. You can't ship cannabis around. So Allen says, now some people at the meeting the other day said they thought that the growers were so successful here in California. It's such a great state to grow in, as we produce all kinds of products, ag products besides cannabis, that they thought that there was 12 times as much as needed in California being grown. Isn't that amazing? So I get a kick out of this gal. There's the czar of pot in California. She's the chief of the state's Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulations, and her name is, I love her name, Lori Ajax, like the scrubbing deal, Ajax. I don't think I'd ever forget her name. So she says, like a true bureaucrat, from now on, she says, our goal is to get folks into the regulated market, as many as possible. But she added, there are some people who will never come into that market, that regulated market. Those people, she said, will eventually face enforcement actions for growing marijuana without a state license. Now, I think, I don't know all the rules, but I've known of people that made beer in their garage. They set up a little still or whatever they use to make beer. And I guess probably you can do it as a hobby. I don't know whether you can do that with hard liquor or not. But of course, as during the Prohibition times, they had all this illicit alcohol running, particularly the South and the Appalachians are known for that, where they had these stills out in the boondocks and they ran liquor, right? And then when they removed Prohibition, that kind of probably removed a lot of the incentive to have illegal liquor, but probably some of these guys stayed in the business because maybe they could compete with but enforcement takes its toll. So the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, they added another initial, but I can't remember what it is right now. Maybe it's explosives or something. Those guys come after you if you're like smuggling tobacco, with tobacco now at $9 a pack. I was just in Vietnam, and you could buy a pack of cigarettes just like you buy a pack here, same quality, for less than $1. I was telling the Vietnamese, and then I ran into some Australians over there, and they said, Lou, it's $14 a pack in Australia. Now, I don't know whether those are Australian dollars or American dollars. So pretty amazing what's going on here, and the regulations are very complex, layer after layer after layer. In other words, if you're a grower, you can't be a distributor, and if you're a distributor, you can't be a retail sales outlet. It's kind of like liquor, right? There's got to be all these different layers, like somebody can't get in the business and dominate it. And government comes up with all these rules. Now, the reason I'm familiar with how the rules are so screwed up, when you look at the liquor laws, as I started to because of Kumar Kairam, my friend who runs the Washington Avenue Market, and is, as far as I know, the only small convenience store in Yuba City that cannot sell a single 16-ounce beer. He can sell a six-pack of them. He can sell a case of them. He can sell a single 24-ounce beer. And that was all the result of the arbitrary stupidity of government regulators at the city of Yuba City. And after a couple of years of complaining and protests, that the inability to sell a 16-ounce beer. Now, the city of Yuba City, the brightest minds who are getting paid $125,000 to $200,000 over there, they had the arrogance to say to Kumar Kairam that, well, not being able to sell a 16-ounce beer doesn't really have an impact on your business, as if they've ever been in business, as if they even knew how to run a business, as if they somehow had a business administration degree and were some sort of a marketing expert and retail sales expert. So this is how government is sticking their nose in everybody's business. You take all the risk as a small business person, and then government wants to tell you how to run your business, how much you have to pay people, whether or not you have this type of insurance or that type of insurance, what kind of advertising you have, how you advertise, where you have this, how big your advertising, what color your advertisement is, what size, how high off the floor your advertisement is. Nickel and diming everybody to death. Well, I realize that the alcohol beverage control, I don't drink alcohol myself, but I've been around it where, like, I had to go get an ABC license because for the trauma intervention program fundraiser that we used to do each year, a dinner fundraiser, the firefighters wanted to sell some beer and wine and make more money for tips. So I had to go get a license. And just the bureaucracy to get that license costs, I think, $25. But just the way it was handled, people were nice. It's just very inefficient. And so all you liquor store owners know this, that just getting a liquor sales license does not give you the license to sell all kinds of liquor. You got to get special add-ons, just like when I got a driver's license. I can drive a car, but I can't drive a motorcycle unless I get a special type license and be trained for a motorcycle. And I can't drive a big rig because I got to have a special license for that. So you can drive this, but you can't drive that. It's the same way in the liquor industry. It's just layer after layer of bureaucracy, and then they come and they slyly come into your store and check it out to see if you aren't following all the rules. Well, the rules are all very complex. Most of you violate laws every day. The police just don't enforce them, like jaywalking and stuff. Some laws you don't even know that you're violating. So, anyway, Kumar Kairam, recently, since I'm talking about him and the baloney that they allow alcohol, but they make it so difficult. And honestly, in some states, the state actually does all the selling of the alcohol. And then for some days, they don't even sell any. They have certain days you can't buy any alcohol. Isn't it ridiculous? It's just absolute stupidity. And it's all about politics and money and just baloney. You talk about free enterprise, we barely have any freedom of enterprise here anymore. So Kumar Kairam the other day was contacted by the city of Yuba City, and they recommended that he reapply for a new license to get the restrictions off his license, which the restriction was he couldn't sell a 16-ounce beer. Even though he paid tens of thousands, $30,000, $40,000 for a liquor license, he couldn't sell anything he wanted because the city of Yuba City decided that that store at that place in Yuba City that was going to be a bad influence in the area of Yuba City to sell a 16-ounce beer over the counter. Now, through a Freedom of Information Act, what's commonly called FOIA, Freedom of IA, FOIA, F-O-I-A, a citizen can request information that is commonly not given to the public. And so the request was made of the city police to provide the activity levels of various stores around Yuba City that sell 16-ounce beers. And also to show the level of activity, police activity, responses around Washington Avenue Market, thinking that maybe there's been a lot of police activity at Washington Market, and they said because of that, we think selling 16-ounce beer is causing it. But what we found was that these other places that are selling 16-ounce beer, they actually had a lot more police incidences around their area. So you can logically think, well, did 16-ounce beer cause it, or did there be a lot of, even though there was a lot of activity there, the city showed favoritism and was prejudiced and biased, since the Washington Avenue Market even had a better behavior record around their neighborhood. They showed then, was it racial bias? The guy owning that store is a Pakistani, I think, a Hindu. And so were they racist? Were they biased? Was it just being power hungry, being arbitrary and power hungry, like, hey, we can do this because we the city, and you're in our city, and you will do what we tell you to do, even though your entire life is at risk here with all these investments you have in this market. So now Kumar Kairam has now had to spend another $100 with the ABC, and then supposedly the city will relook at the entire situation and maybe, by the grace of Almighty God, allow our friend Kumar Kairam, who's trying to put his 3 kids through college, allow him the incredibly risky behavior of selling a single 16-ounce beer to those who are 21 years of age and older. Amazing. And it's only taken, now, you wonder why more doesn't get done in our government? If you think we have problems at the federal level, the Senate and the House, honestly, you just have to look down there at the city of Yuba City, City Hall, city of Marysville, the 2 counties, and you will find the same exact problems: ego, selfishness, self-interest, payoffs, favoritism, bias, racism, and you'll find the same things. So if you can't address the issues here, when it takes 2 years to address this issue and get it corrected over a 16-ounce beer, you're going to trust them to solve a murder? These same people to, like, properly manage the city? Help you know, when the evacuation got screwed up between the city of Yuba City and Sutter County, I was not surprised because we got people that spend a lot of their time fussing around, jerking around family men like Kumar Kairam over a 16-ounce beer instead of doing the more pressing issues of dealing with gang activity, solving violence, and making it easier on businesses to make a living, and solving maybe the CalPERS tax problems. So anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see how the marijuana thing, you can see the mess that we got into even in the city of Marysville. The Buck Weckman, who worked for government his entire life, worked for the California Department of Forestry in Yuba County, and got so put out at the lawlessness of marijuana growers in the foothills, and they just arrested someone this last week. Headline, Thursday, July 27th, forest find up near Bullard's Bar, 3,500 pot plants. Some of you pot smokers think, hey, so what? Well, the problem is that along with that pot plants, they polluted the water, and they created 500 pounds of trash. So you guys that love to grow pot, if it was all tidy and you handled all your trash and you didn't pollute, maybe there wouldn't be so much a hullabaloo about the whole thing. But I believe it was on the 17th or 18th, a Tuesday of July, that Buck Weckman got his appeal before the City Council of Marysville. And people that were there, I was on my way to Vietnam, people that were there told me, they said, Lou, it was so disgusting to see the compromise, the lies, the baloney, the bureaucracy, just the hypocrisy of the City Council, who violated repeatedly their own ordinances, and in spite of screwing up the entire vetting process of who would get a dispensary, the 2 dispensaries in the city of Marysville, overruled Buck Weckman's appeal. And basically he was just saying, hey, why don't you just follow your own ordinances? If you want to do this, do it, but just at least obey the law. You know, it's interesting when you and I are expected to obey the law. You get pulled over, they throw the lights on you, you pull over, and there's a kind of a protocol you go through, right? The police come to your house, there's a protocol. You follow the rules, you follow the laws, right? Ambulance, you hear an ambulance siren, you pull to the right. There's all kinds of these rules. And we're expected to follow these rules, but when you is so amazing to watch these government boards, councils, totally violate the rules and protocols that have been established so everyone is treated fairly and justly and the same, and yet the City Council of Marysville, and here we're dealing with a topic and a product so touchy as getting people loaded and high. And yet they are violating their own laws to get it done. And then they expect us to have confidence in them that they're handling the rest of our affairs at City Hall fairly. You know, it's interesting whether it's Yuba City who have jerked around Kumar Kairam, and I know of other areas where very well-known people in the city of Yuba City have been lied to by the city of Yuba City. And I work with the city of Yuba City. I work with the police over there. I work with the administration. I like them. But not everybody's operating with honesty in this thing. And I can say that about any of the agencies out there, whether it's Yuba County, Sutter County, Marysville, Yuba City. People lie. And people have personal agendas. And people, it's just like when Larry Munger called the dollar store people effers. Those effers. How dare he say that? What kind of crude person is this? Does he beat his wife? What kind of does he steal from people? What kind of a person calls a business, a legitimate business that has jumped through all the hoops, effers? When government wonders why people have lost confidence in them, that's why. Is everybody in government like Mr. Munger or Darren Gale, who's been jerking around Kairam Kumar? No, they aren't. There's some really fine people working for government, and I know some of them. They're very good people, and I'm happy they're there because we need good people in government. But honestly, man, when we got rotten people in there that we cannot get out, they taint the entire thing. They taint the entire operation. And when the good people that are there stand by and let it happen and have been told over and over and over again it's happening, and they do nothing about it, they inherit the problem. They become part of the problem. When we do not stand up against unrighteousness or wrongdoing, and we allow it to go on, we are part and parcel of that. It's like an accessory to the crime. And people say, well, I didn't want to do anything because I'd lose it would cost me. Well, then they would say this about me. Well, it's really sad. It's really sad. So I'm going to talk here, and I'm just going to lead into this. We're ending our first hour here today. By the way, if you just checked in, this is Live with Lou, and this is the Patriot KMYC today, and we'll be on here till noon. We're finishing our first hour, but I'm going to talk right after the break about the amount of welfare fraud that's going on in this country. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and it should get your attention. And Mr. Barack Obama fed right into it and knew this guy was too sharp to know. He just wanted to just throw that money out there, and he did. And it's you and my tax money. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're into our second hour. You're listening to Live with Lou. And once upon a time, before the government took over charitable activity in this country called welfare, churches and other nonprofits took care of the needs, whether they were orphans or whether they were addicts or alcoholics or people a tragedy happened to, like their place burned down or sickness that got a hold of them, a terminal illness or something, or they needed help. They needed a time to get over a rough spot. And there was a time when government, the founding fathers didn't see government should be involved in any of that. They shouldn't be involved in health. They shouldn't be involved in providing medical care. They shouldn't be involved in providing welfare. And it's a modern phenomenon. And so whatever happens with government, they just can't manage it. They just don't do well at it. And so when Barack Obama came in, he began to give away lots of stuff, feeling that the America created lots of victims and that people that were poor, they were poor because somebody else made some money and that created them to be poor. And so therefore, though those that made the money, we should take money away from them and give to poor people. Whether or not they worked or wanted to work, they should just have same benefits. So we gave away phones called Obama phones. Actually, that was started and expanded under the Bush administration, but then we called them Obama phones. And wow, we just expanded food stamps. Food stamps were started under Lyndon Johnson. The war on poverty. But in 2014, food stamp benefits were given away, and expanded to 46.5 million Americans could not feed themselves. Isn't it amazing? I don't know anybody in my entire family, uncles, aunts, cousins, that never could feed themselves. They always worked. And they're all blue-collar workers. I don't have any professionals. I had one cousin that was a CPA. The rest of them were all just blue-collar, worked in building cabinets, construction, meat cutting, all kinds of stuff. And they all were able to feed themselves. It's interesting, huh? So anyway, 46.5 million Americans, each of them receiving an average of 125 and 35 cents per month. It's pretty nice, huh? Just for breathing in the United States. You think, oh, this country's crappy. You just get up in the morning and keep breathing. You can get $125.35 average. So, but this was meant to help people get over a rough spot. That's what's told the taxpayer. But what's happened is people that get these, we used to call them food stamps. Now they come in cards. They're value cards like a credit card. And they just keep loading that money on there at a certain time each month. And you just swipe the card like you would a value card. So people used to trade food stamps for dollars, right? They'd sell their food stamps. Maybe they'd sell it for 50 cents on the dollar. So I'd get their food stamps. Say if they had $200 in food stamps, I'd give them $100, and I'd take their $200 in stamps, and I'd go and buy my family $200 in groceries because I fronted $100 this person, right? So the government has taken some actions against this kind of fraud by passing a rule that requires SNAP, that's the food stamps, recipients to contact the state when there have been an excessive amount of requests for EBT card replacements in a year. So in other words, the SNAP system in California, although we probably don't follow the federal guidelines because we just ignore everything here. So the SNAP program in California, if Lou Benninger keeps telling them, hey, I lost my EBT card last month, sorry. Hey, I lost my EBT card again this month, sorry. Can I have a new card, please? Right? What that means is that I'm selling my card, you see? Because it's no longer stamps that are issued every month. I just have my card, and if I sell my card that maybe has $300 worth on it, and I sell it for $150. So that highlights now, because I'm told that Sutter County Welfare doesn't even go out. They haven't done a welfare fraud case in years over there. So I don't even know whether California is doing this, but they are in some states. They're tracking people down. So in Maryland, more than a dozen retail store operators in and around Baltimore have been charged in connection to a huge food stamp and wire fraud scheme. The indictments allege the retailers received more than $16 million in federal payments for transactions in which they did not provide any food, a fraud scheme commonly known as food stamp trafficking. In other words, they swiped the card, they took the card, but they gave the people back cash. So say I'm the retailer, I'm the shop owner, and I take $100 off the card, but I give the guy $50 back. I split it with him. As a result of these transactions, they allegedly obtained more than $16,482,270 in EBT deposits for transactions in which food sales never occurred or are substantially inflated, and split the proceeds with the food stamp recipients. Now you say, I wonder who's doing this. Shaniqua Jones? Tabitha Smith? Some black babe down there? No. This was Walayet Khan and Shaheen Tazwar Hussein. Khan was 36, Hussein 60, Mulazim Hussein 54, Mahmoud Hussein Shah 57, Muhammad Rafiq 58, Muhammad Shafiq 50, Aliyah Shaheen 24, Muhammad Irfan 59, Muhammad Sarmad 40, Qasim Muhammad Hafid, aka Qasim Muhammad Hafid 51. So it's interesting. 10 of the 14 arrested happened to be Muslim. We're not saying, of course, that all welfare fraud people are Muslim. It just so happens that in Baltimore, 10 of the 14 involved in this $16 million scam were Muslim. Now, the question is, what'd they do with all that money? Was that money funding terrorism? Oh, you think, well, why do you say terrorism just because it's a Muslim? Well, it's just a coincidence that all Muslims aren't terrorists, but it just happens to be that all terrorist acts happen to be Muslim folks. So what's happening is when government gets involved in trying to help people, they really don't hold anybody accountable. You say, well, they held these people accountable. Well, that's just a tiny tip of the iceberg. Food stamps are often sold for between 50 and 70 cents on the dollar. So why don't we just pay out welfare benefits in cash and just give out 30% less? Wouldn't that make sense? Then let people just spend it on whatever they want, drugs or whatever. Kind of an interesting scenario, don't you think? I wanted to mention an article that I wrote that came out this week in the Territorial Dispatch. If you want to look at it online, it's very easy. If you're new to the Territorial Dispatch, it's a weekly paper in the Yuba County area. They distribute it in Yuba-Sutter and a little bit up into Nevada County. Maybe, I don't know whether it gets over into Butte, a little bit into, I don't know. But the bulk of them in Yuba-Sutter and a little bit up in Nevada County. Anyway, you can look at it online at territorialdispatch.biz. And I wrote an article. Wait a minute. Okay, but before I do that, this ties into it. It's called Yuba County Borrowing to Pay Debt. But as I was mentioning, Leon is keeping me lined out here so I don't lose my mind. As I was mentioning how government doesn't do anything well and how it has messed up the welfare system, last night, in the middle of the night, the Republicans, 7 Republicans, including John McCain, voted against repealing Obamacare, even though they all ran on, when they wanted to be elected, they ran on defeating Obamacare, but they would not pass a repeal of Obamacare. So I have this clip that I'd already planned to run anyway called Government Can't Fix Healthcare. Have you ever wondered why you can't just go and choose the doctor and all that stuff like you want, just like you go buy a car? Well, let's listen.
Why is the government so bad at healthcare? They've been at it for 75 years and still can't get it right. It's expensive, access is spotty, it's mired in bureaucracy, and it's fraught with waste. Obamacare was supposed to fix all this, but instead, like every other government healthcare program before it, it just made things worse. Why? Because the government is a third-party payer. Let me explain. Suppose you're going to buy something for yourself. You have 2 priorities, price and quality. You want the highest quality for the lowest possible price. Say you're buying a television. You have many options, the size of the screen, the quality of the image, the price. Only you know which one best suits your needs and your budget. And a lot of companies are competing for your business. You do your research, you make your choice. This is called a first-party purchase. The person paying is the person using. Now let us suppose that either the price or the quality is not controlled by you. In this case, you're buying something for someone else. You care about the price because you're paying for it, but you're a little more flexible on the quality. A good example would be a wedding gift, say a coffee maker. You might think, by the time it breaks, they'll forget who gave it to them anyway. The cheaper one will be fine. All of us have bought things for others we never would have bought for ourselves. We care about the price because we're paying for it, but not so much about the quality because we're not going to use it. Or suppose we're going to use something, but we're not going to pay for it. Then we're concerned about the quality because we're consuming it. But the cost is not as important because we're not paying for it. Any father who ever got roped into paying for an open bar at a wedding understands this program. Nobody ever orders the cheap stuff when it's free. These are called second-party purchases. The person paying is not the person using. And now for the coup de grace. When it's not your money paying for something and you don't use it, then you're not concerned about either the price or the quality. Suppose the boss gives you $150 to buy a door prize for the office party. In a store window, you see a 6-foot-tall stuffed frog marked $149. You think, oh, that's perfect. Let's buy it. The raffle winner is awarded the 6-foot frog. Everyone laughs at the gag. Now, this is called a third-party purchase. A purchase that is made with money that's not yours. Therefore, you don't care about the cost. To buy something you're not going to consume. Therefore, you don't care about the quality. Here's the point. By definition, all government purchases are third-party purchases. The government spends other people's money on things it won't consume. It doesn't care about the price or the quality. Thus, there will always be waste in government spending. That's why, to paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, government should do only those things that a man cannot do better for himself. If 300 million Americans were free to buy health insurance for themselves, just as they buy their own life and home and car insurance, then that little gecko on television would offer us health insurance with a little more coverage for a little less cost. And he wouldn't be the only one. Insurance companies and hospitals would be working night and day to get our business. Quality would go up, prices would go down. It's already happened with laser eye surgery. It used to cost $2,200 per eye. Now it can cost as low as $500 per eye. That's the way free enterprise competition works every time. But when the government gets involved, costs go up, waste and fraud go up, essential medical services are denied or unavailable. These are the hallmarks of government healthcare bureaucracies around the globe. The sooner we make health insurance a first-party purchase again, the sooner Americans will get the health care they want. Finally. I'm Bob McEwen for Prager University.
All right, so the whole healthcare thing has gotten very confusing to most folks because most folks aren't that old and they don't remember what it was like before businesses got involved in providing health care. The way that started was in the 1970s. Richard Nixon was president, and he told the businesses of the United States, they were trying to slow down inflation, that they could not raise wages. Isn't that amazing how government just says, whatever you're paying everybody, you're forbidden to give them any more money. And so typical of humans, they always think of a way around something when it's stupid. Just try to block a road and see how people, what they do. They drive around the barrier, right? Because they want to get to the other side. So what people did when they were forbidden to raise wages, to attract top prospects to their business to work for them, they threw in health insurance as a benefit. And so because people were buying health insurance, that people that wanted it at that time would just go to an insurance company and buy health insurance. And so businesses then said, hey, we can't offer you any more money than this, but we will pay for your health insurance. So then more and more businesses packaged health insurance. As time went on, they lifted the wage restrictions, and then you could pay people whatever you wanted again. But then now we've had this phenomenon where some businesses were offering health insurance. So then more and more businesses, when people would go to get hired, they'd say, well, you provide health, right? Just like you do today. Well, that creates that's a second party system. The guy that was just doing that talk by Prager talked about government getting involved in being a third party payer. But a first party, what you want is a first party payer where you're paying for your own health insurance. Therefore, you use it just for what you absolutely need it for. Because if you abuse your health insurance, it's the same way if you abuse your auto insurance. What happens? They raise the rates, right? They raise the rates. You start having wrecks. You don't take care of your car. You don't lock it up. Somebody steals it, right? You keep having too many claims. They raise your rates. So that's the abuse. But the interesting thing is, a lot of people can't sort that out on how government wants to tell all of us that somehow there's no way that with health insurance is different than buying bananas and car insurance and electricity and all these other things. It's somehow too complicated, and we're not going to be able to care for everybody without the government involved and regulating it, right? It's interesting how the Democratic senators said, if you end Obamacare, people will die. Well, what happened before Obamacare? I've lived most of my life without Obamacare. People weren't dying in the streets. So when I went to Vietnam here a few years ago, I had a bad shoulder, and I talked to a surgeon over here. I didn't have any insurance, and I wasn't old enough for Medicare, and I was trying to figure out the cheapest way to get my shoulder repaired. And so I got a quote from the surgeon, and he said, I need an MRI to see what's wrong in there. And so he said, here's some MRI places, x-ray places around town, get a bid on it, and if you're going to pay cash. So I thought, well, I just took his write-up on what I needed, and I flew to Vietnam, and I had some work to do over there. So I called a hospital and asked them if they would do an MRI for me. They said, sure, come on down. And so I went down at 7:30 in the morning. I was the first client of the day. It was a very professional operation. And they charged me for an MRI on my shoulder for rotator cuff problem. They charged me, I think it was $130. And they had all the results, a DVD, a printout, real x-rays that you could look at on a screen, the x-rays in a cardboard carry thing to take on the plane, a DVD, and the write-up from the doc, who was the x-ray doc. They had that done before I finished breakfast in the cafeteria once I'd completed the MRI, and I was able to walk out of the hospital without coming back. And I got that for $130. When I brought that back, the surgeon, Robert Berkey, in Yuba City, who still practices and did the surgery and is a very good doc, he just started laughing. He said, you know, Lou, there's hope for modern medicine if they can do that for you over there at that price. And probably, I'm just going to give you a guess, but some of you have had MRIs and seen what it costs the insurance company to pay for that, but I'm probably guessing it's going to cost $1,000 if you have that done in the United States. So that shows what competition is can get you, is that MRI prices, all your prices on different kinds of things would go down if the government was not involved in paying for it. It's the same thing that happens with student loans. I don't know whether we'll get to it today, but when the government finally put a cap on student loans, tuition started to drop this year since Trump took over. It's amazing. So when government gets involved, it skews and corrupts everything. Now I'm going to talk about this right in a minute when we come back, because the party's over here for this segment. Okay, be right back.
Let me emphasize that those of us who want to privatize, who want to have public institutions be controlled by their customers rather than by the politicians. We all want public institutions, and I insist the real issue is government versus private, not public versus private. Those of us who want the institutions that serve the public to be controlled by the customers are not in any way suggesting that the people who work for government institutions are lazy, inefficient, bad, or anything like that. It is not a criticism of the people. It's a criticism of the system. Someone came up to me in the intermission and said, I was a postal worker for 30 years. I worked hard. Of course he did. The individual postal workers, many of them, I won't say all of them, not true in private business either that all of them, but the great bulk of individual government employees are doing their very best to do their job. But the institutional arrangements under which they work make it impossible for them to do a good job. It's the system that's at fault, not the people. You had a dramatic example of this recently in Britain, where a government-owned trucking company, a transport company, was privatized, in this case by having the workers buy it, by a buyout, what we call a private buyout. That company had been losing heavily before. It is now making a very fine profit, and the shares in that company have something like quadrupled or quintupled. The same people, but the incentives were very different in operating. So I do not mean to criticize school teachers or postal service employees. On the contrary, what I want to do is to have a system under which they can do their job. I have had any number of school teachers who have complained that with the kind of administrative guidance they get from Mr. Honig and his fellow civil servants, it is very difficult for them to do their job. If you look at the record the number of administrators in government schools has been going up much more rapidly than the number of teachers. The total amount of money being spent on schools has doubled, on government schools has doubled over the past 20 years per capita. The biggest increase in that has been for administration, not for teaching.
All right. Welcome back. This is Lou Benninger, and you're listening to Live with Lou. I want to talk about, in a minute, the California public employee retirement system and how it's affecting cities and the two counties, Yuba-Sutter County. And in fact, the article I wrote has comments from Butte County and other counties in the territorialdispatch.biz on the internet. Yuba County borrowing to pay debt. If you've ever been in a situation in your personal finances and you had to go out and borrow money to make payments on your credit card or your house, that's a bad sign right there. Well, that's exactly what we're doing. But before we get there, I wanted to play a clip about a car salesman named Larry Love. And the reason I want to play it is because Larry Love, at his car lot, he has some warranties. You know, sometimes you have a warranty on a car. And so if your car breaks down, he'll give you a bicycle, or if he doesn't have a bicycle, he'll give you a shopping cart. And in the city of Marysville, we authorize the stealing of shopping carts. And those are worth from $102 to $100 a piece. You can get one from Walmart or any of the grocery stores or drug stores like CVS, etc. And if you steal something inside worth $100, you'll get arrested. But if you steal something like a shopping cart, it's totally fine, and the Marysville Police Department will not enforce that. So let's listen to this about Larry Love, the car salesman.
Better Days Auto Sales, where our vehicles have seen better days, and we want you to see better days too. Hello everyone, I'm Larry Love, owner here at Better Days Auto Sale, and boy do we have a deal for you. Some cars you might have to push off the lot, some cars you can drive off the lot, but hey, I'm Larry Love and I love you. So come on down now at Larry Love, 855-5560. Larry, let's go. Larry, let's go. If you're thinking safety, I got this Chevy Blazer just right for you. All right, I have to admit, it's not the flyest ride on the lot, but guaranteed you here, it's the safest car on the lot. I had a crash. There we go. Had me safe. Thank you, Larry Parker. Here we go. I have a car. Chevy Blazer, 88. Give you a cash rebate. That's right, you heard me loud and clear. Nothing's wrong with your ears. That's the cash rebate, $50 cash rebate. You give me $550, I give you $50 back. There we go. See, no need for AC. Just jump in your ride, stick your head outside, and feel the breeze, feel the breeze. That's what I'm talking about. Larry loves you, even on a hot sunny day. I'll even throw in the state-of-the-art GPS system. It's not hard at all. So easy, a caveman can do it. See, Larry loves you, and Larry don't want you lost at all. So use your new navigation system to come find my place. Larry loves you. At Better Days Auto Sales, Larry even got love for the pimps and the players. Here at Better Days Auto Sale, yes, we'll throw in a 2 weeks warranty. 2 weeks, yes, that's 2 whole weeks, or 25 miles, whatever one comes first. Yes, and if you buy our extended warranty, we'll also throw in a mechanic. Yeah, and he'll drive in the passenger seat with you, or in the trunk, because that's that leather in there. Don't want to mess up that. And if you don't get our warranty, yes, we have a mobile part department. Yes, missing mufflers, check, got them. Dipstick, got them. Brake pads, you're gonna need them. Yes, all here at Larry Auto Sale. Come on, let's Larry make your day. And remember, Larry loves you guys. If you get our extended warranty and your car's in the shop, no problem. I got this complimentary bike right here for you. So yes, we have your own selection of colors. Take your picks. Friends need a ride? We got shopping carts for you to drag along in the back behind them. Yes, so come on down to Larry. We'll also pimp your ride. Here at Larry Love, we also sell classics. We have a 1976 Beetle truck / mobile home. Yes, it also comes equipped with a bubble light Benz light. It comes with a 5th wheel if you catch a flat. And I don't know about OnStar, but this car have a star up on it. And we have the wood grain tint. Never seen that before. Not even on Pin My Ride. But yes, it also comes with an extra key. An extra key. Yes, and don't think Larry Love don't love you guys and I'll sell you a car with no protection. Yeah, right. I got you, buddy. Yes, sir. So come on down to Larry Love and get you a classic. Larry Love, for president. I'm the mayor. Give your kids a kiss. I love the kids. I'm Larry Love. So come down and buy a vehicle, please. It also comes with a baby mama. Come on in here, Keisha. Yes, go on now. Come get it, Larry Love, at 818-99999. Larry Love, love you guys. So come on down, Larry Love. Yes, you seen the deals, so come on down to Better Days Auto Sales, where our cars seen better days, and we want you to see better days too. Just remember, come on down and ask for Larry Love. Yo habla español. And to my other friends, konnichiwa, shishini, ni hao, shaika. So come on down and get a car now. Larry's the best in town.
So at the base of the 10th Street Bridge, the city of Marysville is so excited about a used car lot that they gave away half of a street down there. So maybe they're going to have a backup plan like Larry Love Auto Sales. I don't know whether Larry's going to be expanding into the Marysville area, but we got plenty of space for him, plenty of empty lots to set up. And the fact that he's offering bicycles and shopping carts as backups if your car breaks down, that's a blessing. So anyway, there you have it. So back to the tsunami that is about to hit all of our counties. If you can hear me talking out there in Northern California, your county is in trouble, and your cities are in trouble. So if you read this article, Yuba County borrowing to pay debt. So anytime that you have borrowed to pay debt, you knew that you were in deep trouble. And so I compared a family in financial crisis with multiple credit cards maxed, paying out 18 to 24%. One of their some of their first thoughts is to get a consolidation loan, or to get another card where they would take the money and pay off these 18 to 24% cards, and maybe get a card with a lot less percent, and put all the cards' debt on one card. And they think we solved something. Well, they did. They probably reduced their payment and reduced the amount of interest to pay back those $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in credit card debt. But usually folks just don't change their ways, because ways are hard to change. So years ago, the problem started in the state of California when they had state workers. The government was very small back then, and they had state workers, and some people just were getting too old to do the job, but they didn't prepare for retirement. They didn't set any money aside, so they couldn't retire. They had to keep working, but they couldn't work anymore, right? There's a time when you just can't do what you used to do. Like I used to be able to leap tall buildings, but I notice nowadays I'm not able to do that anymore. So what they did at the state is they set up a retirement plan, and they said, at this date, you need to retire. And we have a plan where we've set aside money for you to do that. And so that was the beginnings of what we now call the California Public Employee Retirement System, or with the teachers, it's California State Teachers Retirement System, CalSTRS versus CalPERS. So this isn't very complicated. It used to be to me before I spent some time thinking about it. But what happened was, like, and a lot of you set money aside. If you don't work for the government, you set money aside if you were smart, because someday you decided you maybe didn't want to work anymore, or maybe you would get tired, or you had your back was bad, or your leg was bad, and you thought, I can't do what I used to do, so I need to dial it back. So you set aside money, and so in a savings account or mutual funds, and eventually that money would be drawn out, and you could live on that money while you didn't work. But when they created CalSTRS and CalPERS, instead of having what they call a defined payment or contribution plan, where you put a certain amount in every month, they created what they call a defined benefit plan, where they would promise the person that was retiring a certain amount they would get for the rest of their life, regardless of how well the investments did that their money was invested in, or how well off the entire plan was. So like with my situation, because I never worked for government, if my investments didn't pan out, I just don't have as much to take out each month, right? So two things were wrong. One, they created a defined benefit plan, which if it doesn't do well, then the taxpayers are on the hook, not the individual. The taxpayers are on the hook. The taxpayers that are the young taxpayers that are now trying to keep up and pay for these old timers that are long retired, but the CalPERS and CalSTRS cannot afford to pay them. So they have to take more and more money out of the other taxpayers. In the crime, in the law books, that's called a Ponzi scheme, named after a guy named Charles Ponzi, who took money from people, said he was going to give them an inflated amount of interest, and so the first people got interest, but it was all based upon new people coming into the plan to get in on the great deal, too good to be true. And you constantly had to have new people coming in funding all these other people going out. That's what this plan has worked out to be. Now, it's the second problem, besides being a defined benefit plan, is instead of a defined contribution plan, was that the government was in charge of it, and the government was going to run it. Remember I said earlier in the day that anything the government touches, they screw up. Now, over the last couple of years, last year, the return on investment for all the billions of dollars that are in that fund going out every month, paying pensioners, their target was to earn 7 to 7.5% on all their investments. If they did that, then they would keep the additional contributions from counties and cities and agencies to a minimum. But last year, they made less than 1%. They only had 0.61%, 0.61%, a little over 0.5%. The year before was over 2%. So that means they alerted all the agencies and counties and cities and said, listen, we had really bad success, bad outcomes on our investments. So we're going to need you to take money out of your general fund. Like general fund is used in cities and counties to fix roads, fix sewers, turn on the lights, repair the parks, upgrade parks, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have to take money out of there, pay for police, pay for fire. You have to take money out of there and give it to us because we can't pay for all these pensioners. So recently, in the last 12 months, they just announced, CalPERS did, that they made over 11%, and they're just shouting it from the housetops. Well, I got a call the other day because I have a small firm in Sacramento that has helped me invest my money that I've set aside over the years, knowing that I didn't want to, if I didn't want to earn money, if I just wanted to do philanthropic work, like I just returned from Vietnam, no one paid me to go there. I was doing a project there. So I paid for that myself out of my money I'd saved, right? And so, but my little investment company that I hire and pay to oversee my investments, they outperformed CalPERS. CalPERS earned about 11 point something percent on the money, billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. And my little pot of money, which is a thumbnail full compared, it's minuscule, right? It's hardly anything, but plenty for me. But my little lady friend, she generated over 14%. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, the guy that runs CalPERS Investments, he gets paid more than $750,000 million, $750,000 and change each year to generate phenomenal returns for all the pensioners of the state of California. Then that's nurses that work for the government, highway patrol, accountants, Caltrans maintenance workers, anything, any type of work, chefs, that cooks that work inside the prisons, everything you can imagine. All those people, they're trusting the state of California. I want you to think of all the government agencies and think of how well or how poorly they function. And you want to entrust your savings for your pension with these people? So that the guy that's getting $750,000 a year to invest our money for the state of California workers, last year he didn't even get 1%. The year before he didn't even get 3%. Now he's got 11%. But on the same period of time, because I just talked to my investment lady the other day before I went to Vietnam, she said, "Lou, we had a really good year. We made over 14% on your portfolio." And I thanked her. I said, "Thank you very much for thinking about me and working for me. I really appreciate it." Because that's money. My dad taught me this. Said, "Lou, if you'll put money aside, if you invest it wisely, then you'll make money without having to go over there and pound nails all day or drive stakes in the ground or jump off tall buildings," right? You can do something else while that money's making money. So now back to my article. Yuba County borrowing to pay debt. Now that should be a red flag to anybody that has ever managed any money of their own. If you have to borrow money to pay for debt you already created, you don't have money in your pocket that you earned, or tax dollars if it's a county or city to pay the debt, you're in trouble. My argument to you today, whether you're in Butte County, Sutter County, Colusa County, Nevada County, Placer County, Sacramento County, all of you are screwed. And your supervisors and your city council are lying to you unless they're doing something like the Butte County or the Chico City Council did. They're throwing a fit because they have a financial planner on there that threw a fit. Now, Andy Vasquez has been having a series of talks, and I believe just before this show, he had, on the 29th of July, he had Nate Black, the auditor controller of Sutter County, on his show to talk about the CalPERS debt and the disaster it's creating for local government. Now, the thing about Nate Black and the good fortune that Sutter County residents had in voting him into office is they got the second generation vehicle of Robert Stark. It's Robert Stark, who served over 30 years in that spot for Sutter County. But because he was honest, he was transparent, and he spoke up, he was crucified. I don't mean that literally, but he was crucified by the Board of Supervisors and the department heads of Sutter County because he exposed the disaster and the bad management of the people's finances in the county of Sutter. And he predicted exactly what Nate Black is now faced with dealing with. At that time, I think it was 2004, Sutter County had a surplus in their retirement fund. In other words, they had money in the bank to contribute towards CalPERS. But the supervisors authorized Larry Combs, the administrator, along with department heads who were greedy, to give retroactive about a 30% increase in pensions, retroactive to the time of hiring for all public employees. They initially wanted to only do it for department heads, but then realized that was illegal. So they had to spread it all around, so they had to give it to all of them. What that did is it took a surplus in the retirement fund to today it's $150 million debt for little Sutter County. And so now the predicament is how long will you be able to sustain paying towards that debt, which most counties are so broke they're having to make monthly payments and pay 3.5% interest or so to CalPERS because they can't afford to make the lump sum payment every month. So the word has got out, just like Stark was persecuted and they carpet bombed him politically and tried to destroy his life in Sutter County. People like James Gallagher, who everybody loves as assemblyman, he was on the board. Jim Whitaker, Larry Munger. These people are all on the board who ended up costing Robert Stark over $300,000 to $400,000 of his own money to defend himself. And he was vindicated by everybody in the end. But the supervisors have dirt on their hands, and they will never admit it because they're too prideful and they're too big of egos, and they're more interested in their own life than doing the right thing for the public. They say they're public servants, but they're really into self-service. So, Yuba County, if you divided up the debt right now, as of 2015, a year or so ago, each household in Yuba County, the decision by the Board of Supervisors of Yuba County and the county administrator, Robert Bendorf, has indebted every household in Yuba County nearly $15,000. I want you to think about that. Not one household in Yuba County caused this. You went to work, you took care of your kids, you paid your taxes, you followed the rules, and the people that were supposed to protect us, the supervisors, the bureaucrats, these people were paying $100,000, $200,000 a year, screwed us. And so now we owe $15,000 per household. If tomorrow we wanted to give out a debt, we'd have to go to every house in Yuba County and ask you to give us $15,000 more of your personal income than you've already paid. In Yuba City, nearly $10,000. In Marysville, nearly $10,000. In Sutter, nearly $8,000. Sutter County, nearly $8,000. Now, the fact is, there's an article in the Appeal Democrat. There's been a number of articles about borrowing this money, and so government is deceitful. So they tell about borrowing this money because they borrowed money. Yuba County supervisors borrowed money. They're borrowing $6.6 million from the Yuba County Water Agency. They're starting to use the Yuba County Water Agency as a slush fund to borrow money to pay their CalPERS debt because they can't fund it. They promised the workers of Yuba County and they gave them retroactive longevity raises. That means they said, hey, you guys have been working for us for 10, 15, 20 years. You've been faithful to Yuba County, and we haven't been paying you enough money. Even though the people went to work for Yuba County and agreed to that amount, the supervisors back in the late 90s came to the workers, and they said to the workers, we know you haven't made as much as Sutter and Butte and these other counties, so we're going to give you an increase all the way back to your first day of employment. We're going to retroactive increase all your wages. So some people got increases of $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Well, the problem with that is when they retire, they continue the retirement amount they get from CalPERS is based upon those high wages. And so now Yuba County cannot afford to pay them. So instead of Robert Bendorf, the county administrator, said, listen, if Yuba County Water Agency will give us a loan, it will save us about $180,000 because we'll be able to front the money to CalPERS at the first of the year instead of paying it by payments, monthly payments, and they'll give us a discount. So the way they wrote this up in the paper is deceitful. And so they say we're actually saving the taxpayers' money, but they aren't telling us the whole story. So I want to tell you the rest of this story in a minute, but we're getting ready. We're taking a break here. Okay, so let me just say a couple more things. We're getting ready to take a break. So anyway, they say we're saving the county money so we don't have to cut back services. But let me tell you this. If right now the county of Yuba is on the brink of not being able to pay for basic services for their citizens, and that's because they're paying too much for pensions. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story when we come back.